In this video, we will show you how to replace your front brakes, pads and rotors on this Jeep Liberty. This will be located behind your front wheel. Let's get into it. Okay friend, let's get started on our job. The first thing we have to do is safely raise and support the front of the vehicle so the wheels are off the ground. Once you've done so, we're going to continue on removing the wheel, starting with the lug nuts. Use a 19mm. Now that we have the wheel out of the way, we have a close view of our brake caliper. We're going to have to push back the brake caliper piston, which is located inside this area, so we can remove the caliper and give the caliper an inspection. To do that, we'll use our pry bar and carefully make our way in between this area of the caliper and the brake pad and gently pry, pushing that piston in. Do this slowly. The next thing we'll focus on is our brake flex hose, and you're going to find that you have an ABS wire attached to it with two plastic clips. We have to dislodge the two from each other. To dislodge these, you can use a small pocket screwdriver or just a small prying device. Make your way in between the locking ends and separate it. Once you have that separated, you need to thoroughly inspect the flex hose, the ABS wire, and the plastic clip. We're going to be reusing all of this. The next thing we're going to do is start disassembling the caliper. To do that, we're going to remove our 13mm caliper slider mounting bolts. You can see one down here, and there's one just above it. We'll start with the top one, completely remove it, a quick inspection, start it back in, just a couple threads. That'll hold it in place as we continue down to our next mounting bolt. Let's go ahead and remove that bolt. Continuing from here, we're going to focus on the caliper itself for 1 second. This rubber boot you can see here is a dust boot. If you see any fluid coming out, that means the internal seal of the caliper is bad, and you have to go ahead and replace that caliper. The piston's completely pushed in, and now we can hang this up and make sure we put no pressure on that flex hose. Continuing on, we're going to remove the brake pads from the caliper bracket. Generally, you can just push these right out of place. If it feels as though you have to pry them, that means they're stuck in the bracket, and that's something you need to focus on later. Let's get this one out of here. Continuing with the caliper bracket, we're going to remove the two 21mm mounting bolts. There's one down here, one directly above it. Let's go ahead and loosen this one. Quick inspection, start it back in, fully remove the lower. Set the caliper bracket aside. The next thing you're going to have to do is remove the rotor from your wheel bearing and hub assembly. We'll lightly use a hammer and we can tap on this, breaking it free, and remove it. There it is, friend. With the rotor out of the way, the next thing we need to do is pay attention in this area. This is your wheel bearing hub, and it's the mating surface that your brand new rotor will sit against. We need to make sure it's a smooth surface. You can use a wire brush or even a small piece of sandpaper if necessary. Once you do have this area cleaned down, you're going to want to continue on with some anti-seize along the mating surface. Get some directly on my brush here, we'll just spread it around evenly. Now it's time to install our brand new front brake rotor. Go ahead and get that in position, and we'll hold it in place with one of our lug nuts. Moving along, it's time to clean the caliper bracket. First, we'll have to remove the caliper sliders. To remove either of these, you want to take hold of the slider, give it a little twist, and start sliding it away from the boot. Commonly, the boot will be held in place to the slider because there's a small groove. If it is, go ahead and break it free with a small pick or small screwdriver. As you remove your slider pins, you want to give them a close inspection. We're going to clean the entire shafted area all the way up to where my gloved fingers are. That's where the groove is, where the boot will sit. All of this needs to be clean and smooth, so we'll have free movement and no moisture or debris making its way in. The next thing we'll have to do is clean our caliper slider boots. To do that, carefully twist a rag and slide it through the center. With that through the center, we'll just roll this around, removing as much of the debris that's inside this area as possible. After that's cleaned out, you need to give it a thorough inspection. We want to make sure it's soft and pliable, not torn, worn, or damaged in any way. Set that aside. Repeat that same process on the other side. After you have both of those out of place, we'll continue on with our metal tins. You have 2 of them along each side of the caliper bracket. Gently pry those out of place, a quick inspection, and you can set those aside for recycling. At this point, we've removed everything from the caliper bracket as possible. We're going to continue on with cleaning the 4 mounting points where those tins were. Once again, 2 along each side of the bracket. Once we have those sanded down, we'll be focusing on the ports for the slider pins. Use a wire brush or some sandpaper for this. Once you've finished cleaning all 4 of these areas, like I said, we'll continue on with those ports. To clean the ports, we're going to be using some parts cleaner directly inside here. You want to be extremely careful. When you spray in, it's possible fluid might make its way out. Just get a little bit in there. Continue on with a bore brush. This will help remove any of the existing grease or debris in there. A quick rinse. And a thorough inspection. Assuming this looks like it's clean, go ahead and do the exact same thing on the other side of your caliper bracket. Continuing from there, it's time for our caliper slider pins and our slider boots. Before we install either of our slider boots, we're going to use some silicone paste directly inside of this area. We'll use a tiny bit inside of the port, but also make sure we make our way just along the outside, along that ring there. Now it's time for that slider boot. Just go ahead and press that right on there. Give it a twist to work in the lubricant. A little tug, make sure it's secure. Continue on with lubricating your slider pin itself. We need to coat that entire shaft all the way down to the very end, and then all the way up closest to my fingers there. We have that small groove for the boot once again. Once that's well lubricated, we'll just slide it in. Give it a little twist and a wiggle. Same process on the other side. Moving from those slider pins, it's time to talk about the tins and their placement on the bracket. With your kit, you're going to find it came with 2 different looking tins. There's 2 of the same. Now what we're looking for is along the edge of the tins. One side of them will have a small locking tab that protrudes out further than the other locking tab on the opposite side. You can see I have 2 of these that protrude out one way and 2 out the other. Now with that said, those longer tabs need to be outside of the bracket, facing away from the rotor. We'll just press these right into position on that caliper bracket and double check to make sure they're secure. Once you've done so, continue the process for all others. Let's get that caliper bracket in place on the vehicle. Bring it in here. Continuing on, we have our 2 caliper bracket mounting bolts. It's a good idea to use a small amount of blue thread locker on these applications. Start them in, snug them up, torque those to 100 foot-pounds. When installing these pads, you're going to find that you have your wear indicator. That wear indicator will be on the inboard pad, and it's facing up. Just want to slide these right into the bracket. If you have to force them in, or even use a hammer to try to drive them in, that means there's an issue, and you want to make sure you pay attention to that. Now we can get the caliper over this area, slide it right on over those pads. Continue on with your 2 caliper slider mounting bolts. Start each of these in. Go ahead and snug those up and then torque them to 28 foot-pounds. Now it's time for our ABS wire. We'll make sure we secure this. We don't want anything getting caught while we're driving down the road. Make your way over here. We can get this lug nut out of the way. One last inspection in this area, and we're clear to reinstall the wheel. With it in place, start on all 5 of your 19mm lug nuts. We'll bottom these out. Get the wheels safely back on the ground, and then we can torque each of these to 100 foot-pounds. With the wheel back on the ground, we'll torque these in a crisscross manner. Okay friend, we showed you how to install one side of your front brakes. The process for one side of the vehicle is the exact same thing as the other. Once you've completed that, you need to go ahead and pump up that brake pedal till it's nice and firm, and then you can go ahead and take your vehicle for a road test. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.